Welcome back. You're watching Money, Money, Money. And of course, this week we are in conversation with the top bosses of Hsbc India. They're helping us make sense of how to manage our money better, both Mr. Ramakrishnan as well as Ravi Menon. So, Ramki, let me get back to you with some broad thoughts on advisory itself. And that's an area where a lot of people get confused and we get queries as well. Should I, if I have a lot of money, should I be doing PMS? Should I just trust my bank advisor, my RM? Do I need to go for independent advisory? Who pays whom? It's still a pretty grey world out there. It is. It is. And I guess the first thing is you need to trust whoever you're taking advice from. Whether it's a bank or an independent advisor, you need to trust him. The second thing is you need to be convinced that whether it's the bank or the advisor is not making money off you when you're not making money. It's okay. I think it has to be mutually beneficial. Banks have to make money, so do advisors. But make money when the client makes money. So a few do's and don'ts from a client perspective. When you reach out to a bank or an advisor, make sure that the advice they're giving you is not in any way linked to the money that they make. And how does one find that out? How do you know, whether the RM's advice is actually fair advice? Yeah, so this is a very good question. We've had situations where a customer would come to me and say, you know what, your RM is not proactive enough. And that actually means he's not telling me to buy and sell every month. Now, they don't realize that that's actually good advice. That you got into something, you seem to be meeting your goals, just stay put. Whereas somebody else will come and say, you've been in this for already 3 months and you've made some money, just move out. Not realizing that. So the minute you start seeing behavior like that, you need to at least be sure, ask him, why is he doing this? So this word of churn has been used a lot in the industry. So that's something you need to be aware of. Secondly, and I'd like to talk about Hsbc here, is that, of course, the RMs do get incentives. That's how they make the money. My RM's incentives are not linked to what my RM sells. My RM makes money when his client makes money. Oh, so that's a completely different model. Then his interests are aligned with my interests as a customer of the bank. So just as an example, if you've got money sitting in savings accounts, let's say 100,000 rupees, and I ask you to put 100,000 rupees into an equity mutual fund. In a traditional environment, that RM should make money. But you've not made money. You've still got 100,000 rupees. It's just a different asset class. So my RM does not make money. But when that equity fund grows and becomes 110,000 bucks, that's when the RM makes money. So the advice has always got to be linked to what the client wants. We keep saying need-based selling. Whose need is the question that always asks. It has to be the client's need. And I think we've come a long way since what traditionally advisory used to be. But now we're very convinced that if the client makes money, there is no way that the bank will not make money. And that, to me, is the way forward. That's quite fantastic and sounds quite phenomenal. But from the AMC's point of view, how is that changing life? I mean, are you seeing this whole distribution model undergoing a change? And as more and more advisory gets more aligned to the actual performance of the product, what should we expect as the year goes by?
Well, I think clearly the whole distribution model and what's happening is changing so dramatically, not just in India but around the world. And the distinction between advisory and distribution and the robo-advisory coming in is a whole new world. And I think what's dawned on everyone, be it a manufacturer or a distributor, is that if your interest is not aligned, then it'll come back to hurt and punish you in a very simplistic way. As far as we go, clearly we believe that the distributor, the advisor, is really the person or the firm which knows the investor best, knows the risk profile best. And that is critical. Therefore, I will be with that distributor advisor as if you are my client. And I will educate you, inform you, and keep you completely up to speed with what's happening with my product suite, my view of the marketplace. And then it is for you to temper that discussion with your end investor. As opposed to a product push, which is also a market practice. And there is a herd mentality which takes place. All of this will continue. You can't change this. But there is a coming together of regulator, manufacturer, advisor, distributor, which I hope will be a much better and fairer system than perhaps what exists.
If I could just add one thing. The whole point about 3-4 years back, we negotiated with all the asset management companies and got out of front-ended fees. So there is no fees I take from Ravi Menon, or there's no fees that Ravi Menon pays me for selling his funds. All I get is a trail income. So actually, even if I move a client's money from one asset manager to him, I'm not making money. Because I was getting trail from the other income, why would I move here? So it also stops an RM from unnecessarily moving money from one fund to another.
Sounds good. I mean, it sounds like far more transparent, sounds completely in sync with the end customer, the investor's objective. Okay, so speaking about customers and viewers, I'll quickly try and squeeze in one last question. This is from Anish Devani. He's a resident of Gurgaon. He's a professional. Says, I've never invested in mutual funds till now. Completely untapped market there, Ravi, for you. He's 35 years old. He wants to start, he says, with a balanced mutual fund. 50% equity, 50% debt. Again, I mean, this is something he's sort of coined in his own head. He's saying whether I should look at a one-time investment in the current market. Should I go in for an SIP? Is it possible to put in lump sum without a fixed value? So he seems to be slightly confused. He's new to this brave new world. Do help him out. And whether you think a balanced fund is the right approach to begin.
One has to be careful in the usage of the terms balanced and prudent, and sometimes these labels can be very confusing.
They can be.
So at the risk of being repetitive, I would strongly urge him to really go back into that discussion to understand what exactly is his risk profile, what are his goals, and what is his tenor. And it could turn out that he doesn't want to take high risk. He's got a very immediate event in the next 3 years. He needs a level of certainty. And for all of this, I go back to the asset allocation discussion.
Sure. So let me drill down a little further into that. We discussed rational expected returns from equity. Same question when it comes to debt. If someone is investing into debt, let's say for the next 3 years, you're willing to lock in, take the tax advantage as well, what's the return you should hope to make?
Today, if you take most of the bond funds, the YTM is roughly about 7.5%. You're talking about inflation at the current levels. I'm not saying it'll stay on. You're actually generating fairly good real returns at this point of time. As long as you keep that in mind, you would find, and as I said, I don't want to hazard a guess, but I think it's relatively visible within the year, 2 years, about the kind of 7% returns on the bond funds. On the cash funds, an alternative to the pure play savings facility of banks, it is much higher. It's closer to about 6.5%, which you can get at this juncture. But you're seeing a secular decline in rates, which is something perhaps all of us, people in the business, people outside, are not used to, because we have always lived in a high inflation environment. But if you go back to your tenor equation, and I say I'm a 1-year investor, I'm a 3-year investor, I'm a 5-year investor, I'm a 10-year investor, you will find all the fixed income funds literally falling into these 4 buckets in terms of the tenor. And therefore, if you have a 10-year objective, I would ask you to match your duration with the duration of your own goals. If you have a 1-year expectation, that's where you should be going for. And the yield curve can be moving, steepening, flattening, etc. And I go back into saying, put your money into the funds, into a mutual fund, which can give you this flexibility of having a fund. For instance, HSBC Mutual Managed Solutions Conservative has got an equal basket, not an equal depending on where we are, a basket across all of these funds. You're getting the benefit of a duration fund, an accrual fund, and a cash fund at the same time through 3 very highly specialized fund managers. So try and look at it from that perspective, but at all times look within what are your goals, what are your dreams, what's your risk, what's your tenor.
So quick last point on fixed income funds. Credit risk, and you mentioned that, and we remember that last year we did have one event, we did have one sort of a blowout of sorts, and again, people not very attuned to understanding how a credit fund works, what kind of companies or what kind of paper it invests in. Are there any such risks that you see on the horizon? Because there are lots of companies going through the bankruptcy proceedings, there are companies which are heavily indebted, might have issued some paper in the market. So purely from a retail investor standpoint, should he or she look at a credit fund at all?
I think it's a very important question, and it's a question which every viewer should really be asking their advisors. You have a fixed income fund, I want to know what's the underlying portfolio. Do not feel shy in questioning, in asking, because some of that is so straightforward to understand. I'm not for a minute saying that don't take risk, right? But you must recognize that when there is higher risk, some of those events will come true. Again, there have been events of default where things blow up. And there are downgrades which take place. And there is a difference between the two. And perhaps in this market, which is dynamic, you will see more of this coming in. But if there is a fund house within your portfolio where every event of default, every downgrade is there a part of the portfolio, I would say it's time to shift. Full disclosure, within the HSBC basket of funds, not a single event, touch wood so far, of default or downgrades, but it is a reality.
Okay, fair enough. So that's one important tip you need to keep in mind. Ramki, final thoughts, any other final advice that you'd like to leave our viewers with?
One advice back to Mr. Anish Devani. He's a first-time investor
He's
into
a
mutual
first-time
fund. Do
investor,
start with an SIP.
Okay.
And a couple of other points. One is need identification, goal identification for every client. Start with that. Many people don't even know what their needs are. It's only when you start talking to them. So that's what. So first thing is identify your needs. Make sure that your RM is telling you about some fund which, and at least the organization should have done some kind of due diligence. It's all about protecting your money. As a banker, I'm very keen. It's nice about growing your money.
Yeah.
Starting point, protect your money. And then we'll help you grow.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for sharing the thoughts and the insights. Very helpful to all our viewers. Thank you for joining in this week.
Thank you.
Well, that's it then on this week's episode of Money, Money, Money. Your feedback, comments, queries are welcome as always. We'll see you again next week.